Welcome back to On Marketing, a show where we explore marketing's first principles, mental models, and personally my favorite, contrarian takes. This is a space where thinking differently about marketing isn't just encouraged, it's the rule. My aim is not to tell you what to think about marketing, it's to assist you in improving how you think about marketing and life. It's December 8th, 2023. I'm Jordan Ogren, a marketing strategist by day and a podcast host by night. Today, we have an amazing guest, Lia Zneimer. Hopefully I said that right. Never have said a last name with a Z before. She came on the podcast and just dropped the knowledge bombs. I'm being completely serious. If you're watching this on YouTube, which I highly suggest you do, see my beautiful mug, you can see me flipping this note card, notes on front and back. As I edited this, because I'm too cheap to have an editor, seriously though, if you're willing to edit podcast videos, give me a call. I need an editor. I just kept stopping the edit. I couldn't keep going because she was saying such profound truths about both social media, brand, strategy, marketing. But even at the end, we spent 15, 20 minutes just talking about life, world peace. This is one of the best episodes, one of the best songs of season 2's album. And this is the last guest interview. I'll have 2 more episodes after this, but this is the last guest. And as they say, we saved the best for last. Let's get into it. But before we do, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter. I just swiped the whole thing, starting from scratch, bringing 5, 6, 7 insights, quick ones you can chew on that can help you improve your marketing, get better at marketing. First line of the show notes, click that, sign up. Would love to have you on that journey. This is for the legal department. All opinions shared in this podcast are individual views of the host and the guests, not representing their individual employers and associate organizations. This content is intended for informational purposes only and should not be acted on it as professional marketing guidance. You should act on this at your own risk. Crazy, I gotta say that. See you on the other side. First question, what is marketing?
In my mind, marketing serves a core purpose, which is to make the user or the target audience care about the why behind the product and why it will benefit them and how it will benefit them, and to evoke some sort of emotion.
I like that, emotion. That's kind of a key piece to marketing, right?
I think so. I think storytelling has become such a buzzword in so many ways, but I do think ultimately at its core, that's what marketing has been about for centuries, and I don't foresee that changing no matter what sort of digital innovation is upon us.
Yeah, so storytelling has been and will forever be a piece of marketing, or how marketing gets done is through storytelling.
I think so. I think it's been something that for as long as we go back as humans, there's always been this desire to connect the dots and to make people feel something. And I think that the ability to weave that narrative in a way that makes people compelled to take action is something that, is applicable to whether it's a product or a brand or a, service that you're offering. I think there's something deeper there.
Yeah, I love that. So what in marketing in the past maybe 1 to 2 years have you changed your mind on, or maybe altered your view on something? Does anything come to mind in the past few years?
Yeah, so my background is in organic social media primarily, which is sort of how I came up into the content marketing world, and then from there into the broader marketing space. So I think in a lot of what I do professionally, I tend to come at it through this social first lens. And so in my mind, something I've changed my view on in the past few years is this idea that there is one skill set that social media managers have that will work across multiple platforms. I used to think several years ago, like, if you're a social media manager, you should be versatile. You should be adept at both written and audio and, video, and that's more than both. But, all of these different mediums. And as these platforms continue to evolve and differentiate, I think there really is more of a skill set that is specific to each individual platform. And sure, some are transferable skills. I think if you're great with short form video, that can be really applicable to both Instagram and TikTok. But I do think there's this assumption that a social media manager will be good at all the platforms all the time. at all the things. And I don't know that that's necessarily fair. And I think my perspective has definitely changed on that in the past few years.
And that's probably more true today than it was 15, 20 years ago with less platforms and less.
Exactly. And also, those platforms at the time didn't have the capabilities that we have now. When Facebook first came out, we weren't focusing on short form content video wise, and we weren't, you know, in the constant news feed flow that we are now, or the For You page flow that we feel on TikTok. So that user experience, I think, has shifted. And as the mediums have changed, so too have the skills needed to really succeed in those various areas.
What clearly a lot's changed. What have you found maybe that hasn't changed for someone in social media marketing or around that? Is there some things that have stayed the same or just have kept their relevance or importance?
I think from the brand side, a lot of things. I think ultimately people want to be heard on social media, and they want a place to feel a sense of both community and belonging. And so I think for brands, being able to tap into that, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on a newer platform, TikTok, as we explore things like Threads, which I have separate thoughts on, but I think there are so many interesting opportunities for people to make others feel heard and valued. And I think that's really consistent year to year, platform to platform, is this like social listening, community building component.
Because as humans, we want to be seen and heard. So that should never change. It's just, yeah, I like that. That's helpful to kind of reorientate around as things constantly change in social media.
Yeah, and I think too the idea that people don't want to be sold to, which is hard as a marketer. I think originally in its roots, social media really started as a way to connect. I mean, if you think back to like the MySpace days or some of these early platforms where it felt more anonymous, it felt like a chat, it felt like a conversation, and then there was this shift toward the idea that everybody needs to be their own media platform. Everybody needs to have an online presence and a personal brand and be producing content. And it's a little exhausting. Like, who has the energy to do that all the time, 24/7, and at scale, and to provide valuable quality content along the way? So I think it became a little bit more of a voyeuristic situation in a sense, where it's less about the contact and the connection and more about the showing and the putting out things one way. So I am sort of thinking that it's time for a boomerang. And I think in 2024, we might see a little bit of people getting exhausted of the constantly publishing and producing content, and sort of taking it back to the basics a little bit. And whether that's private channels, whether it's Slack and Discord communities, whether it's, text. There's a lot of talk about the way that text is going to impact social media. I'm just super curious to see how that will unfold.
Yeah, we're kind of, as much as it feels like we're late in the social game, probably in this 50-year time span, we're just in this early stage of like where it evolves to eventually, especially to just like using the failed Titanic of Clubhouse. Like, does audio ever have this place to play? Because right now it is within other platforms. And I know even with X, in all of those things going on, it's like, oh, where will we be in a year? But even like 5, 10, 15. So I like that idea of the boomerang, back to the basics, and really focusing on like what's the job social's doing for our marketing, and how do we ensure that we're not just following trends or doing what others are doing.
Exactly. And I think there's this Gen Z feeling that I really love. And I've seen a lot of folks using digital cameras again, or using flip phones, and like this retro sense of like going back to not having technology. And I think that's interesting too. I'm like, what does that mean for us as a brand who's so focused on trying to capture people's attention? Social media has been wonderful to us in so many ways, whether it's organic reach or whether it's addressing member concerns or talking to people directly to source feedback. It's been so great. But what happens if people decide that's no longer the thing? Like, then where is next?
That's a really interesting thought to this maybe new wave of people that were raised so much in it that they're like now just like inundated. I don't want anything to do with it. But I would wonder if the cat, quote unquote, the cat is out of the bag, in the sense that social media for me has clearly dismantled or displaced local or just media in like the traditional sense where yeah, you had the whole Sam Altman, the CEO kind of thing, and it's like, where did that go down? It was on Twitter or X. It was people sharing pictures of him back in the office, and it's like that used to be obviously like the news, but now that's
Exactly.
social media. So to your point, how does that then change in the future if we do have a reluctancy to be like all on digital, as to your point, Gen Z or some of these younger folks are like, should we be this deep into the social and all that? Yeah.
And I love that they're questioning it. I love that it
Yes.
forces us to like live a little bit more offline again, which maybe leads to more of a boom in out of home. I don't know about
That's a
traditional print, just,
yeah.
based on newspapers and how things are going. And as someone who loves the publishing industry, that breaks my heart. But I think there are probably going to be so many opportunities that we don't even know about yet.
Which for me increases the need for call it critical thinking or just simply thinking. To your point, it's like, wait, all these things are changing. How can we gain the attention, or how can we get in front of those people we want to? And it'll probably be a little bit of outside the box thinking, which for me usually requires just first principles thinking, critical thinking. So that's why I love this podcast, because it really gets to sometimes those core fundamentals. It's not about how do you maximize threads or whichever, which somebody needs to talk about it if you think threads is your channel. But for me, it's more of like kind of the fundamentals of how do we even communicate our brand story, or some of these things that are constant regardless of platform, or constant regardless of communication channel.
Totally. The things that stand the test of time.
So I have a few topics. Social media is kind of one of them that I want to get deep into. But first, I want to just talk about brand strategy. Like, what is it? How do you think about that for a company? And maybe that's defining it, or maybe giving some examples. But how do you think about brand strategy?
So I think in my mind, once upon a time, I used to think that brand strategy was brand identity. I used to think it was logos, colors, fonts, the stylistic elements of what makes a brand, the logo. I think the biggest shift for me personally was during my time at WeWork, on the brand team, and then now at Teal on the brand side, building this company from the ground up. It's been such an eye-opening experience in terms of it being so much deeper than just brand identity and visuals are so important, but it's just so much deeper than that. I think it's honestly how you make people feel along the way at every single touch point. And I think there's that quote out there, I believe it was from a coach, about your character is who you are when no one is watching, or what you do when no one is watching. And I think about that all the time for us as a brand, is how we are continuing to show up in these tiny micro moments day after day, whether it's in our copy, in our email newsletters, in our social posts, in our day-to-day emails with members, with partners, with vendors, with the outside world. Like, every little thing is sort of this additional straw that builds up this haystack altogether. So I don't know that I could pinpoint it being one individual thing, but just this cohesive, bit by bit, these things that form one cohesive identity.
Yeah, I like how you kind of touched on just the dichotomy of both the visual or external representation, the logo, colors, font, yada yada. But then there's also this like internal representation. I think a lot about branding, sadly, as people. And it's like you could do as much external branding as you want. I have Gucci shoes, I have a nice suit. But if that internal branding isn't off, I don't know who I am, what do I stand for, what do I say no to, what battles do I fight? I'm kind of just a very like shell of a person. It's like, oh, they look good, they feel good, but they're not like that much of depth when you're able to your point, have micro moments with that individual. So I like that you pulled that out for a brand, because I think we think of the big moment, the brand reveal, the new logo, or these big moments as important, but really it's the small moments, which lead me to asking you, how important is saying no? Because it seems as you do more things with brand marketing, it's just harder to stay on brand for all of those micro moments, where maybe saying no can reduce the amount of them so you can be more of your on brand, quote unquote. How do you think about saying no in marketing and branding?
It's such a good question. Saying no is not my strong suit, admittedly.
Me
I think
neither.
that I struggle with it a lot. I think a lot of marketers do. And I think there's a tendency to want to do more. And honestly, like this sense of ruthless prioritization is something I've really been trying to work on this past year. Our founder and CEO, Dave, has been instrumental in that and sort of helping me get more clear on impact to effort ratio of like the things that you are saying yes to mean you're saying no to something else, and thinking about where and how I'm allocating time and energy. And I think as a brand, one of the things that's helped is really keeping our core brand values as our North Star along the way, and then using those through the lens with which we make decisions. So, for instance, member first is one of our team values and one of our core values as a brand. And so when it comes time to prioritize, let's say there is a new product that we're launching and there is something we're really excited about getting out the door that's like a little bit of a shiny object that we're so focused on, but then there's this core fundamental issue with the product elsewhere that's causing a member severe headache and hassle. Like to us, it would be tempting to be like, well, from a marketing perspective, let's push this shiny new thing, but member first, we really want to always ask ourselves, well, what is in the best interest of the member? And then that in turn helps us prioritize our decision making. And in an ideal world, we'll be able to do both. But just in these moments of, push comes to shove, there are moments when we get a really angry member who writes in, who's really frustrated with their job search. And we have to, one of our core values is trust first, assume best intent. And we get these angry messages, and instead of freaking out and responding with how we're actually feeling, our community support team is phenomenal. And they are very much like, hey, human first. Hi, there's a human here on the other side. So just, I think staying true to what your brand values helps you then say no to things more organically.
So then that probably means it's important in your brand strategy, or when you're creating a brand, to have values, to have these things you can anchor decisions to. I mean, it seemingly helps in prioritization. Just thinking even of my personal prioritization, if I don't have values, what I care about, I'll say yes to anything. I'll say yes to that. That's good. I like that.
It's like if you don't dictate what you want, someone else will dictate it for you. And so, it's empowering in a sense. It's also a lot of responsibility and pressure, but making that like proactive choice about what you do stand for. And I think sometimes to get to the core of what that is, I once had a mentor tell me it was like chipping away at an apple until you get to the core, and you like bite off the things you don't want and you discard them, and then you're left with this core of what you do want. So I think that can help whittle it down.
Yeah, I like how you said that, because I think the same could be for the company, in the sense where if they don't have these values, the customer or anybody out there will essentially start to direct them, whether it's like, oh, these people are, giving us a lot of money, so we'll start to kind of change our brand maybe subconsciously to them, where if you have values, you say no. And this is something I hear a lot with maybe smaller businesses, or just like, we say no to certain types of business because it doesn't align with our values. And that's something that I think is courageous, and it's very effective long term. In the short term, you're like, we just let that go. But you're showing to everybody essentially like, we know who we are and we're not going to change for profit or for quick gain. So values are critical in that sense.
They really are. I also, for us too, it's not necessarily a core value, but we really don't want to be beholden to companies in terms of taking money from them to list jobs on a job board. And that really ladders up into this member first, customer first. We're building a consumer first tool. And so we want to make sure that our business objectives are aligned with what we say we're going to do. So it's this interesting blend of like, how do we make the right decision financially for the company, but also for what we stand for and what we believe in. And I think that may feel counterintuitive at times, but ultimately, like, trusting your gut can so often lead to decisions that are right for the brand, even if they don't seem financially like the smartest on the surface. Not even the smartest, the easiest. Like it would be, the easiest decision is not always the right decision, and vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah, and I couldn't help but wonder if intuition and values have some interplay underneath the surface, like where I just like intuitionally I know that taking from a store is bad if I was raised with maybe like Christian morals or values, where somebody that came from a house where their own parents were stealing, it's like, well, what do you mean? Like, why? My intuition is not stepping in to say don't steal this candy bar. I'm just going to take it. So that's like a interesting thing where you could almost train your subconscious or your intuition if you have the exercise to define who are we, what do we stand for, what are we against, all of these kind of fundamental things, which all the tactics ladder up to that, which I really enjoyed how the examples you use, it's always laddering up to these values or these virtues that your company has, which is makes it easier to make decisions, I think.
I think so too, when you're not debating every single decision in and of itself as a decision and have this like framework to operate against.
Yeah, speed is probably what you can get with that. Yeah.
Exactly.
So my second kind of main topic that I really wanted to dive in on is we talked about it, social media, like social media strategy, like where does that fall within a marketing? Obviously, maybe you're just very focused on that, but like how do you think about it within the entire marketing or communication plan? Like where does social media play in it? Does it drive things or does it lead things? How do you see where it lives?
It's a great question. I think for so many years now, not so many years, social media in and of itself is really not that old. I'm dating myself here. But I really think it started out as more of an afterthought in a lot of marketing organizations. And it was like, we guess we should be there. We should do that. What's that platform, that thing? It's supposedly important. And I think I've been really fortunate to work at companies where it's not an afterthought. It's more of like a central part of the conversation and of the strategy as a whole, as we're thinking about what our goals are and how we're going to get there. So I think that's a very lucky place to be, that I know not a lot of marketers may be able to say the same. So I think oftentimes, like in an organization, I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it in the comms org. I've seen it in the brand org. I've seen it in the marketing org. At WeWork, we honestly bounced around a lot. There were years when social media was part of our public affairs team, other years when it was part of the brand team, other years when it was part of marketing. So I've seen it sit in all of those organizations. I do think there is more of a brand marketing tie-in with close cross-functional collaboration with PR and comms stakeholders. I think that just makes the most sense from an alignment perspective in terms of objectives, and social being a really core distribution channel for so many brands. Marketing seems to be a very natural fit, I think. But I do think more and more the brands that are winning are really the brands that are putting social at the forefront of the decisions in the first place. Everyone loves to talk about Duolingo, and for good reason. Like, they've just really, really nailed it when it came to not taking a piece of content that was originally created for another platform and then distributing it to, all the other channels. They really came in with a social first approach and then took that, built the brand organically on TikTok, and then grew that and expanded it into their other channels as well. So I think, the more there's this movement, I'd say, on LinkedIn of social media professionals who are frustrated with being treated as an afterthought. And I think that is really reaching a tipping point where no longer are we in an age where it's really best practice to just share a link back to your blog and call that a social strategy. I think it takes organic strategy on the individual platforms, and that the more brands can really trust the social media marketers, the more insight they'll have into what their audiences really want in the first place.
Yeah, I really like everything you said there, especially the Duolingo example. Not that I'm a paying customer. I can only speak English. I want to learn new languages, but they've done a good job. But it makes me wonder that there's the Duolingo or other companies like that where you're doing a great job of like creating content just for social. But then there's this other idea that I've been working on this kind of essay guide of micro macro content. So you create this macro piece of content, aka this podcast, and then social media slowly becomes a micro distribution channel where I kind of take things and create the micro in a 0-click kind of value, so you get it right away, but it's not like, here's a really short snippet, go watch the whole thing. It's like there's value in it. How do you like, because it doesn't seem like Duolingo at all is playing that game where they don't have this larger macro piece that is going on TikTok or whatever. They're creating for social. So how do you see, are some companies built to do that where other ones should create a thought leadership macro content and then use social in all different ways to push that? Or have you thought much about that? Or how would you react to that possible dichotomy, but it could just be perceived as well?
It's a very good question. I don't know that it is a one size fits all answer. I really think the traditional marketing response is it depends. But I do think there are so many companies and brands that are doing it really well, especially, with a small and mighty team and limited resources. Some of my favorite content creators to follow and learn from on LinkedIn in particular, Jess Cook has a ton of fantastic content out there around what it means to distribute content, particularly as a small team in the B2B SaaS space, and how you can take this one meteor piece and then distribute it across various channels. And that works great for some companies. Justin Simon, also on Distribution First, does a really beautiful job of explaining these principles and talking about how to get as much value as possible out of a foundational piece. And then there are also thought leaders I love and respect, like Amanda Natividad, who talks a lot about how you should and could create zero-click content to keep users on platform, regardless of what platform they're on, not linking them back and trying to get the traffic back to your website, that like providing value and providing something to your users where they are, meeting them where they are, inherently holds so much more value than perhaps a view on your website would. Not that it has to be either or, but I do think there's this blend. So I think some of the companies we've seen really thrive and succeed in the social media space, in the marketing space, are almost set up more like media brands, in terms of content production and really investing resources into that engine. And I don't know that every team, of course, is not set up the same way. I don't know that every brand needs to be a Duolingo. Like, I know they're amazing and I respect what they're doing, but I don't think that needs to be the North Star for every brand.
Yeah, and I think that it could probably be a quick way to do bad marketing is just
Totally.
copy and
Yes,
paste. Like
100%. And spreading yourself too thin, too. Like, if you
trying to,
know
yeah.
resources wise, goals wise, if your goal is to drive leads or demos and you have a really great long form piece of content that you are able to create, produce, distribute, have it all drive back to the same place, like that's awesome. There is no rule out there that says you can't repurpose and you can't slice and dice it in 50 different ways and create social content from that longer form piece. I think it's just up to each individual brand and sort of what their goals are and where their target audiences are.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Could you maybe double click on just that fact, which I totally agree with, that zero click content, which I can only hear certain people being like, but our goal is to increase website traffic. Our goal is like,
Sure.
how do you play? Because just using a personal example, I recently off 2 different LinkedIn posts, I bought a person's book. Now, most times you would have thought I need to drive people to my website landing page where then they can read all about my book and then buy it. But it was 2 great story posts that I was like, I want to learn more like this person. So how do you balance that? Like keeping on platform, but also like web traffic is a vital metric at times.
So for us, we see a lot more web traffic from organic search than we do from any of our social platforms or links from our link in bio or links in posts. So that is a separate, really heavy investment in organic content and SEO. I think, not every brand has that at their disposal, and that's something to keep in mind as well. But I do think you nailed it with once you see a message several times and you have these various touch points and you feel something, probably, presumably, from what you're reading, and you don't feel the need to like click elsewhere, but you want to be there, you're almost like more inclined to buy the product because they're not asking you to go out of your way to do something that modifies your behavior. They're just offering value with no strings attached. And with enough of that value, you are trained to sort of want more of that value. And where do you find it? It's probably Googling that brand or going to their website or going to their social media landing page and then from their profile finding their website. So I think it's hard to measure the exact moment that someone makes that decision. But I do think this idea of always providing value first is rarely going to steer you wrong.
I love that. That's well put. And I think it gets to just this illusion of marketing or the buying process being linear. I think there's just that illusion that whether someone would admit it or not, they just think that of like, we need to go from social to website to the contact page. And it's like, have you recently bought something? Because I guess I'm betting it wasn't as linear of like, I see this and I go, it's just like someone told me about it. Then I went online and I didn't buy it that day. Then later I saw another ad and yada, yada. So I think sometimes that illusion that like it's always going to be clean and like if we put people, so I think that's something that I've wrestled more with, of that lack of certainty of like, if I just, to your point, add value, try to help my audience make progress, things will work out. If I have a product that actually fits in that market or a service or whichever, which is a huge larger topic of like getting something that has product market fit or all of that. But no, that's good. So Lia, I think I'm ready to jump into the marketing hot seat. This is where I'm going to ask you a bunch of quick questions and you're going to give me, this or that, yes or no, and then some open-ended at the end. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So we're going to begin with this or that. So you can add any content, but obviously as quicker, the better. So would you rather have traditional marketing or social media marketing?
Social media marketing.
Which is stronger in marketing, generalist or specialist?
Oh, this one's so hard. Oh, generalist. It depends.
Yeah, that is, you can add that after every one because that is the marketing answer. Paid advertising or organic growth for growing a brand?
Organic growth.
Long form or short form content?
Both.
You need both, definitely.
If I had to pick one, I'd go short form.
Yeah, we're losing attention by the day, so I agree with that. If you had to choose in-person event marketing, so an in-person event, or digital campaigns or digital events?
Digital events.
Yeah, with COVID, I feel that is still kind of hanging there.
I love the idea of in-person, but I do think there's something about the accessibility of a digital event that enables more people to potentially attend, learn, grow than just sort of the barrier to access an in-person event. But I do think in-person is super important.
Yeah, but no, I like that. Accessibility is a huge thing I've been thinking a lot about with content, but that's a good point with like events, digital, even recording, you could, if you missed it. Yeah, that's good. All right, now jumping into some yes or no questions. I need a job. Do I use the green #open-to-work banner in my picture?
Yes. Well, this is another it depends, but we actually did just do a survey on this with data to back it up, that 91% of recruiters and hiring managers surveyed said they do not view the green banner as a deterrent. So I'd say it's a sign that you're being proactive about your search, and there's no harm if you are open to work and comfortable with others knowing in sharing that broadly.
Yeah, I saw that LinkedIn post, so I knew I had to kind of ask, and that's crazy, 91%. Wow, that's pretty strong.
We're going to keep the survey going over time, increase that sample size, but
things change, but that is still a pretty heavy lean towards it's probably okay to use that. That's cool. Definitely. That's cool. Do you believe remote work has improved efficiency in marketing, or has it, has it improved efficiency? Yes or no?
Yes.
I would agree. Will AI help marketers more than hurt them?
Yes.
I'm behind that as well. Is personal branding crucial for career growth in marketing?
Yes.
Is marketing going through a shift like never before with digital and AI and all social media?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
All right. Now the fun ones, the open-ended. So if you have more to add, aside from it depends, you can add that here. So what's one key piece of advice for those starting or transitioning into marketing, social media marketing, brand? What would you give one piece of advice to them?
I would say don't wait for someone else to give you the opportunity to have an experience. Create your own experience. We're in an age where so much is accessible, especially in the digital space. And the easiest way to gain experience is to create it yourself. So don't wait around for someone else.
Yeah, if you need permission, Lia just gave it to you, so do it.
Here's your permission.
What's one mental model you use for your daily work, whether it's in marketing or maybe even for like prioritization or kind of that? Is there any mental models that come to mind?
I don't know if there's a formal name for this, but I've been really, really, really trying to prioritize just 3 things each day. And I don't know how well it's working, but really asking myself, like, if this does not get done today, is that okay? And if the answer is yes, then it does not need to be one of my top 3. And I think that's helped me really realize how much I don't do the hardest thing first. I am so inclined to push off the hardest part of my to-do list because I am such a perfectionist and I have a fear of failure. So that's been a good learning.
I like that. 3. Yeah, because I think, too many times we just have this to-do list to where it's not totally, and even just that fact of, it's just a kind of a constant focus. But I agree with you. I hate eating the toad first thing, but I know that's important, right? Eat the frog
just like
or whatever.
The vegetables, yeah.
Yeah. Eat it right away.
Have
get
the
it over
carbs
with.
first, please.
What's one skill you believe every marketer should possess today?
I actually think the ability to know how to leverage AI.
I love that.
Which I did not think I was going to say, but reflecting on our conversation, I just think if you don't get on board, you're going to be left behind. And I don't think that AI is going to take your job. I just think you're going to be infinitely more equipped to be creative and be strategic and use it as a tool in your toolkit. So I think the more of us that can accept it and not try to fight it, the better. Like, it's happening. We're here.
Yeah, your
Buckle
opinion doesn't matter. It's coming. Yeah, no, I love that. I love it. What's maybe not the number one book, but a book that comes to mind that has helped you make a lot of progress in the last 5-10 years that you constantly go back to or you have thoughts of that was really important for you?
I think often about Atomic Habits. I actually just pulled it out again. I ordered a hard copy because I only had a digital copy, and I'm excited to give it a reread. But just this idea of setting yourself up for success with the fundamentals and teaching yourself to habit stack and do things in a more productive, streamlined way.
Yeah, I love that book. It really opened my eyes that, kind of making progress on being a better person wasn't magic. I could do these small habits and ways to stack them, as you mentioned. Yeah, that book was helpful for me as well. I love the physical. I got a physical. I can't go without that. Just highlighting, pulling the
note taking.
But digital's nice. You don't have to have me. I'm carrying 6 books to and fro work every Friday when I leave. It's like, what are you doing? But
you need a rolling suitcase instead of
seriously, that would make me feel like a CEO. All right, final open-ended question. What's a top tool that you use that helps you do your job better? Whether it's like a tool as a pencil, or maybe I'm thinking more software tools. Does anything come to mind for you?
So I am a Notion gal through and through. We're in the process of transitioning from Notion to Linear for project management as a team, but Notion is my go-to at all times. Just the best.
Yeah. I couldn't live without it. I mean, to your point, there's a lot of alternatives, but just the concept of a Notion and writing first and yeah.
Sure, and the ability to also just easily search your thoughts, find what you need, nest things as needed. It's been a game changer for staying organized for me. And their calendar, I don't know if you've tried Cron, but it's actually really a nice user interface.
Oh, really?
Yeah, enjoying it so far.
That's awesome.
I live and die by my calendar. So.
Yeah, no, same. And I love what they've started to do with the AI or continually do. I think that is a huge unlock if you have tons of notes or company wikis, you can quickly ask or do AI stuff in it.
For sure. I'm excited to keep playing around with that.
All right, now you made it through. Thank you for going on that journey with me. We're going to wrap it up here, kind of going deep with some life questions. So if you want to bring it back to marketing branding, sure. But this could go in many different ways. So please take it where you wish. First question. If you've watched a movie, there's this movie called Inception, Leonardo DiCaprio. He goes into people's dreams and incepts ideas. So then the next day they wake up and they think, I want to sell my company or whichever. So if you had the ability to go in the minds of everybody on earth and incept one idea, so they wake up tomorrow and they act out of that idea or belief as their own, what idea or belief would you incept?
Okay, this is a miscongeniality answer, but world peace. I just wish everyone would wake up and be like, oh, we want to love our neighbors and view the similarities, not the differences, and just stop the incessant violence and hatred, and maybe a bit heavier than what we were going for in this podcast, but it feels like so many people genuinely want what's best for humanity, and that sometimes the people in charge are not listening.
So how could I be better? I'm behind that. What's a step or thing you can do to maybe love your neighbor more, or see your neighbor? Or maybe it's all the leaders and it's like everybody under them sees and loves neighbors, but the leaders are putting people in positions where they have to act out of anger and violence. Or what could be something the 2 to 3 people listening could apply maybe?
It's a great question. I wish I had answers. I think honestly diversifying our perspectives and our opinions and taking the time to educate ourselves, especially in the world of social media, there are a lot of conflicting pieces of advice and news reports, and just it's a lot of information all the time, and sort of this willingness to put your strongly held beliefs aside for a second and just absorb information from someone you may not historically agree with. I think that can do a lot in terms of shifting perspectives.
Yeah, it made me think of the strong beliefs held lightly.
Loosely, yes.
Yeah, loosely, yeah.
We were just talking about that. It's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I'm reading Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, and one of his things is on listening. And essentially, he says listening is suspending judgment. And I think that's so critical, because many times you hear information, and there's obviously like biases, availability bias that we easily fall into, where the most recent information or the things that are available to us, we overweight them. But I think there's just that thing of like just suspending belief. I don't know if, Israel, Palestine, I'm just going to suspend belief and keep learning more, hearing every side, kind of putting myself in their movies, quote unquote, because everybody has this intense movie that's going on that for them is so real, and they feel so put in a corner, or they feel like people are whatever that is, and it's impossible to understand that until you say, I want to be in your movie, I want to put that on and fully. And I think listening in some of those things could be a way. It's hard. Listening is hard. I'm not always the best, ask my wife, but I think it's something we could strive to aim to do better, I think.
For sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you might have talked about it, loving your neighbor as a value or belief, but what is a value other than that, or a belief that needs more focus and attention today, that maybe it was something big in the past, or something that is even new that we just should put more attention on, a virtue, a belief, or a value?
The first word to come to mind for me was integrity, so I'm just going to go with it. I feel like if that's the first thing that pops in my mind, I'm just going to say it. But I just think we live in a world where it's so easy to not do what you say you're going to do, or not be who you say you're going to be. And there's just a lot of discomfort in that space. So I feel like that is something, not to say like we had it and then we lost it, but, I don't know, as a society, maybe if just like a disheartening time as a whole, but I think the more integrity each person can kind of bring to the table, the better off we'll be collectively. I don't know if I
really
love
like
that answer, but it's where we are.
No, I mean, I do, from the standpoint that I haven't put much thought on integrity, and maybe it's because it's a bit of like fish in water, where integrity comes very like not easily to me, but I've been kind of quoted, you're a man of integrity, you kind of do what you say you're going to do, and you if you say you'll be here, you might be 5-10 minutes late, but you're going to be here. And I think that is something, and maybe comes in my mind, is this lack or avoidance of commitment, that integrity has some level of commitment, that if I'm going to play at this space, that there's a commitment that every day I show up a little bit higher, where I guess that is probably conflating a lot of things, where you could be integrity at a lower state, but it just seems that integrity is work to kind of be who you say you are, and not to like manipulate people. So how do you see this kind of, for me, somewhat of a scaredness of kind of like committing to things, like people now, job hopping is a lot of due to like the companies that just lay people, like still there is this thing of like a lot of people around me, it's like, wow, you've had 5 jobs in like the last few years, and some of them have to be where you just said I want something different, or the commitment like left. So how do you see integrity, commitment? Do you even see any interplay between them?
So interesting. I think yes, for sure. I also think it's kind of brings us back to brand values in a sense of like staying true to who you are and what you believe in and your core values, regardless of what else is going around or going on in the background, and kind of quieting that noise and sticking to the things that you hold dear. So I think commitment is definitely a tricky one in this day and age, and not necessarily on the job hopping front, though that too, but I think just sort of this idea that we've all, not all, many of us have like bought into this idea of what success is supposed to look like or what it's supposed to feel like. And then there oftentimes is this waking up in this realization that like either this isn't what I thought I wanted, or this isn't what I thought it was going to feel like, and is this all there is? And this sense of like, how do you then carve out space to explore things that do align with your values that you maybe didn't give yourself permission to like explore in the past? I don't know if that really totally ties into integrity, but I think going back to sort of what you believe in as a person and as an individual, and realizing that there's no one set mold for what success is going to look like, and then staying true to yourself and that internal North Star.
Two thoughts. First, you need to have values to stick to them. So that makes the prevalence of, even as a human, what do I value? What do I care about? What virtues do I hold most dear? That's an exercise that you almost have to do first, because integrity is impossible if I have no foundation. Like I can be whoever. Yeah, I can be whoever I want. And so it's almost like a commitment to those values. Maybe that is the integrity. Like acting out of integrity is when you commit to your values. Yeah, to yourself, which are your values. But I do think some of the things you're talking about do make, in my mind, realize that commitment in and of itself isn't positive. A commitment in a terrible relationship is bad. It's not good. Don't do that. So I think it's like, being intentional about, okay, I'm going to commit to these things, and maybe some of the stuff you're talking about, even if I wake up, which I've done sometimes, and I'm like, what am I doing with my world? My life is just like stay committed to what we decided on. It's almost like I have two people in my body. It's like long-term Jordan and short-term. And short-term's constantly being like, let's go this way. Let's go this way. Let's change. Let's, jump all into AI and, become the AI guy, rather than like, let's just do a little bit of both. Like, let's ease into it. No, I really like that. That's something I haven't heard yet talked about on this podcast. So I'm always excited. I do this series where I write on things. It's like on, compassion, on reconciliation. So I just put in my notes on integrity, kind of go deeper in what's that word, where did it come from? I'm big into etymology and such. So I appreciate you.
I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, I'll share it once it's done in probably like a year. I'm so behind in my writing. But another question that I really enjoy to ask is obviously what we do at work is important, but sometimes it's the things we do outside that allow us to be better at work. Is there any practice, hobbies, things you do outside of work that when you come back to work, you're just a little bit more focused, or you just have more energy?
A big one for me this past year has been meditation, and I used to resist it so much because I was like, I don't have time to meditate. I'm so busy. Like, I can't quiet my mind. And I forget who said it, but the saying about like everyone should meditate everyone should meditate for 10 minutes a day unless you're very, very busy, in which case you should meditate for 20. And I think there's something to it where it's like those moments of quiet have sparked then creative inspiration, or have allowed me to just, I'm still working on stilling my mind. I am not all the way there, but just providing that time and space, I think has been one of the best practices I've implemented in the past year. And I'm still, learning as I go, for sure, but just it's so counterintuitive to like stop doing for a second and just let yourself be. And I think it's like in those quiet moments that so much of the good stuff comes about. It's just training yourself to do what's best for yourself, which is why I got Atomic Habits.
Yeah. No, we can quickly go astray. I've found that with myself, and I really enjoy that. I've yet to have someone directly mention meditation. That's something for the last 5 years I've done daily for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And it's, to your point, I still struggle with stilling the mind, but it's almost this thing where it's they talk about information. A mind expanded will never go back to the size it was before. I think
I
the
love that.
same is once you touch stillness, once you touch this inner peace, you'll keep going further there, where you'll never, unless you totally stop and kind of wake up every day in the morning, go straight to like social media, like you won't go back to this like way that your brain was before, where I can't even imagine if I put myself in my mind 5 years ago, today it would be like, wow, I'm thinking so much, where then it was just natural that I constantly had chatter, where today I have a little bit. So saying that of like even 5 years of doing it daily, it's still like, how do I quiet my mind in this situation? But over time, it's allowed me to focus on what I believe is the essentials or the things that matter in life by stilling, quieting my mind, which is counterintuitive, as you pointed out.
Yeah, and honestly, yoga for me is the same. I love yoga. I've practiced it for years and years, but I especially like find these moments of forcing myself to disconnect and unplug and be off my phone and off a screen and in that space. That to me is almost more meditative than the meditation sometimes, like coupling it with movement. So I think that's also, in a weird way, made me a better marketer. And also when I'm taking care of myself, I feel better and I'm better able to show up for my team and for my loved ones. So trying to keep that in mind too on the days where I feel like I'm too busy.
Yeah, I think that's a core reason I have this section, is I find some of the best marketers, the best thinkers, they aren't totally masters of their craft. They're masters of themselves. They're masters of their mind. They're masters of kind of synthesizing. And for all these things that it's like, geez, there is no class in, business administration and emphasis on marketing on meditation or on yoga. Because I do find that yoga and meditation have just such a kind of sync. I mean, usually when I do yoga, that last bit is meditative. You kind of lay out and so they're so intertwined that I think, to your point, one or the other or both is very helpful to do better marketing, to care for people more, which is so like weird of like, I want to do better marketing, we'll go meditate. Like that's such a counterintuitive answer, but
Totally.
that's what
And
I
honestly,
tell.
sometimes so many yoga instructors have like a beautiful section of the practice where they're sharing their thoughts or reflections, or there'll be a theme, or there'll be a, what do you want to dedicate your practice to today? And it also just sparks ideas. There's so many times where I'm like, oh wait, actually I wish I did have my phone so I could write this thought down that's fleeting in the middle of class and I don't want to forget it. And I think I'm going to remember it and I never do. But if it's important, it'll come back to you.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah, it'll rise back up to the surface like that ball you push underwater.
Exactly.
It'll just come right back up. So final question. I asked you kind of this a little bit maybe earlier with like social media and marketing, but with everything changing in our lives, with technology, with just everything, what do you hope doesn't change? So 10 years from now, what do you hope stays the same with whether it's personalness or business? Like what do you hope is around in 10, 15 years?
This is a little bit of a weird one. Letter writing, like handwritten letters and notes.
Yeah.
Like I hope that does not go away. I hope it does not go the way of digital. I think there's something so special about a hard copy of a birthday card or it's top of mind because we're in the middle of wedding planning right now, but a wedding invitation where it's like the tangible, just really physical manifestation of a moment in time that mattered, that like you want to preserve, or like sharing love with someone in writing. I think there's something so special about that, and I hope it doesn't go away. I hope it's still here. Email's great, but there's something just about like a hard copy that I hope lasts.
I love that. I personally am not a huge letter writer. I actually recently bought some letters because I want to do more of it. And I think a thought I've had that is a full different podcast, so I don't want to go too deep into it, but just this kind of generational shift where in the olden days, quote unquote, letter was the only way you could tell someone you loved them or whichever. So people would collect their letters. They would have them dear and near. And even there's this Abraham Lincoln, possibly not true story, but he would write letters to people that he was angry at, and he would put them in his cabinet, his desk. There's something valuable, I think, about writing, and we've moved so much to this auditorial or just taking things in, where journaling, writing thoughts, writing a letter to someone to actualize, what do I care about this person? Like, what do they really mean, rather than, just sending a text on their birthday, happy birthday, in the, the iPhone does the cool balloons and stuff. There's something different about the letter. I'm glad you brought that up, because I also hope that I don't only get emails in 10 years and no letters. That'd be a sad world.
But also, like, note to self, I should start writing letters more. Like, I really don't do it enough.
We both are in that boat, Leah, so I need to do it as well. Well, that was so fun. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. I know I learned a lot, and I hope the 2 to 3 other people with us learned a few things.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so cool to just hear your questions and hear how thoughtful you are about all of these issues and topics, and I've learned a ton as well. So thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And this is the end of the podcast. Thank you for making it to the end. It means the world to me that you watch or you listen to this episode, and hopefully you're walking away with new insights to improve how you think about marketing in life and help you make progress on what matters to you. But one thing before you go, if you could subscribe wherever you're listening to this or watching, that would really help out both you getting the episodes right when they come out and raising this podcast in the rankings, so hopefully more people like you can listen to this. And if there's anything that I can do to make this podcast more beneficial for you, if it's somebody you think I should interview, if you're the person, please comment, please email me. It's in the show notes, so we can just continually deliver more value to you, the listener. Again, thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day, evening, week, and hope to see you here next time.